Understanding final merits determination in an EB1a petition is about the most important aspect of your entire case. There is so much energy and so much discussion and so much debate put into individual regulatory criteria, yet very little is ever spoken about with regard to final merits determination. So I just wanted to sort of introduce this topic a bit, understanding that when we look at the USCIS adjudicator guidelines, they will first look at and determine whether or not you have met 3 of the 10 regulatory criteria that exist under the EB1a. Then they'll turn to whether you've met or not met the final merits determination. And essentially the final merits determination is determining whether one is considered as among a small percentage of leading experts within their field of endeavor. And that is the reason why we always put a great deal of emphasis on specifying one's field of endeavor, because whether or not you meet the regulatory criteria, or 3 of 10 regulatory criteria, you're still going to have to be measured as it relates to the final merits determination. And the way I think about the final merits determination is the qualitative aspect of the case rather than the quantitative aspect of the case. So if we're to consider the quantitative aspect of the case, we might think, for example, do you have evidence that you have reviewed and judged the work of others? Have you authored scholarly work that has been published? Do you have membership in a professional association within your field that requires outstanding achievement? Now, let's just think for a moment, because there are thousands and thousands of cases that one can find that have been appealed within USCIS because an individual filed for the EB1a classification and then found that despite meeting at least 3 and sometimes 4, and I've even seen 5 regulatory criteria, their cases are still denied. And the reason why they're denied is because they lack qualitative evidence. So that example that I had mentioned about a person who might have, for example, Globee Award judging. USCIS will grant the criteria, but they're not going to give it a lot of weight. That individual might have professional membership, 1 professional membership at IEEE, even senior membership. Again, they may or may not grant the criteria, but if they do, they're not going to give it a lot of weight. And they might have a recently authored publication in an obscure journal, and they, again, may grant that criteria, but they're not gonna give it a lot of weight. What I mean by not giving it a lot of weight is that the regulatory criteria in those instances are quite shallow. So when they look at the final merits determination, the adjudicator is essentially taking a holistic approach to your entire case. And when they look at the holistic nature of a case that is built on very shallow evidence and in some instances paid, fabricated or created merits that is being put forward as evidence of extraordinary ability, they are not stupid. They understand what they are looking at, and they'll even grant you the regulatory criteria, but they will actually not even give you a RFE or a request for evidence. In most instances, what they'll do is they'll say, fine, you meet the regulatory criteria. However, we're going to give you a notice of intent to deny your case because you fail to demonstrate that you are among the highest percentage within your respective field. And this is all too common the case. If you want to take a smart approach, a wise approach to acquiring your EB1a, you need to steep your case into what you've actually spent your life doing. Meaning, if you have worked in a professional in the professional realm over a number of years, the work that you've done in that space needs to be put front and center. So oftentimes, what we like to do is think about what are the highest quality regulatory criteria that exist for a particular case, and then do a very deep dive into those regulatory criteria such that not only will you meet the criteria, but we are able to successfully argue how that regulatory criteria demonstrates that you are among the top percentage within a particular field. And I'm going to actually demonstrate one such way that we do it. For example, if you are going to consider the criteria of demonstrating that you perform in a critical or leading role for an organization of distinguished reputation, let's think about not only what we need to do in order to meet that criteria, but more importantly, why does that criteria matter as it relates to final merits determination? The situation might be, for example, that one is a product manager or a product engineer within a particular, let's just say, an IoT device company. And that individual actually works on developing products that are used within a household, and they also happen to work for a company that is maybe among the top 5 IoT companies in the United States. So in this scenario, the performance evidence will demonstrate that this product engineer was responsible for products that are significant to the outcome of the company that he works for's significant to the outcome of the company that he works for's activities. So when it's significant to that company's activities and that company is performing at the highest level of its particular area of endeavor, we can deduce or conclude that the company that is sponsoring, or the company that's hired this individual at a product engineer level to work on IoT products and itself is a leading IoT product company, we essentially have shown this individual is at the highest level of his field, because that leading IoT company, based on the evidence of their reputation, would not otherwise trust any ordinary individual to undertake the engineering of their IoT devices. Because of their reputation in the field, they would only trust one of the most advanced experts in that particular field. So to simplify it, as this may be a bit hard to follow, what you need to understand is that based on the level that you hold within your company and the level that the company holds within your field or your area of endeavor, we're able to measure where you stand within your particular field. So what we're doing is we're not only using the regulatory criteria in this instance to prove that you meet the criteria, which according to the law says that the work that you do is significant to that particular company's activities, but we're also going further and saying why your role or your performance in that company that itself has a very high degree of excellence in terms of their reputation demonstrates that you're among a very select percentage of leading experts within your field. Ultimately, what you want to do in order to prove the final merits test is to use the regulatory criteria as a vehicle to demonstrate that you are among a select few within the entire field, and that will not only